has anything to say about the deindustrialization of this country.
Georgian townhouses on the moon, the highest GDP per capita in the Milky Way. Small modular reactors under every village green. This is Anglo-futurism.
Welcome back to the King Charles III Space Station. I'm Tomo.
And I'm Calum Drysdale.
And with us today is Shiv Malik. Shiv is a journalist, author of 2 books. You got distracted by crypto, you did a startup, you did another one, and now you're the would-be founder of a city. You are a modern-day Romulus.
Thank you, and thanks for having me on.
It's great to have you, and I want to direct your attention to the Mullions porthole. You see the stone flagging that we're sitting on. So there's a famous Mullions porthole, and what we're looking over, as you can see, is this empty field in the southeast. Can you tell us a bit about this rather juicy-looking empty field?
Well, it's soon to be populated by around 1 million people. It's 45,000 acres, so I'm assuming you can see it all. It's just to the east of Cambridge. And it really is the first city that the UK has built in over 50 years. As you step into it, you'll find that, I have to resist, because one of the things that you realise quickly is if you impose your vision on something like this so early, it becomes very difficult. But here's my own personal, if you want, fantasy about what it could be. And if you've travelled a lot, you'll know just how amazingly efficient cities really can be. And they don't all have to be modelled on, the traditional kind of Victorian set of streets and et cetera, et cetera. So what I personally would really love is a place where the city centre is almost fully pedestrianised, and there's trams running through it. The skyscrapers are made of wood, which obviously then gets people's heckles up. They think it'll burn down, but they're amazing.
Cross-laminated timber.
Exactly.
Someone's hackles are coming down.
My hackles are tumbling.
It's possible to build 60 stories out of...
Because it has glue
wood.
Between the different layers, and the glue stops it from burning quickly.
Exactly. And in a sense, we're kind of reaching for the sky we're using, massively kind of new materials, but that have been improved and enhanced through technology, right? The kind of marriage of that. You can use this as an opportunity to also correct so many failures of the past. So if you look down and stare down, you'll find, okay, the sewerage is done right for once. God bless his kind of socks in his name, but Bazalgette made a huge mistake.
You take that back,
I know, clearly a friend of the show, a hero of the show. But he had a decision to make, which is 1 tunnel or 2, one for the rainwater and one for the sewerage, or just make it one giant tunnel. So he failed and made it one.
We in the Bazalgette community regard this or describe this as the unsayable thing. It is unacceptable within our circles to even draw attention to this.
But he planned a sewage system for a city 4 times the size of London at that time, right?
Yeah, but the point is
one makes mistakes. Sure,
one makes mistakes, and you know who's really to blame? It was the vestries. It was the vestries who held him back, and because they
she was deeply regressing in working.
Well, I knew it would rile you.
No. The London Metropolitan Board of Works.
Calum was actually going visibly red.
The London Metropolitan Board of Works had an impossible task, and Bazalgette's predecessor, in fact, died on the job because it was such a challenge. Yeah, few people know that.
I'm waiting for your next essay in defense of Bazalgette.
anyway, sorry.
He's actually written it, but it's about 8,000 words long, so it's pretty impenetrable.
So
Shiv,
there are things
please
you
resume.
can do from Greenfield, which just again,
So the poo disappears.
right, exactly.
Great.
Everything's great, and it's just a massively productive place.
No. I do want to make one point. I do want to make one point, which is just that it's impossible to predict the scale of population. That like Bazalgette's models on predictions were, yes, he underdid it, and I think he, the scale of of population growth by the time that he predicted it was much larger. But surely, if your city is successful,
I would say let us flush this part of the conversation away. Perhaps it will inevitably blow up later. But I think we should let Shiv continue painting this picture of the forest city.
I will give over my time.
And I guess what's so wonderful about it is, there are so many ideas for how people could do things differently. And, you're right at the center of the Anglo-futurist movement, and you're, I'm guessing, bombarded with new ideas all the time. But there's no repository for any of these things, especially when it comes to the built environment. And unleashing and unlocking those ideas, you can... We already have hundreds of volunteers, many of whom are coming up with these sort of ideas, but they don't have a repository. Being able to instantiate those things as you walk through the city and see, that's so smart, that's so intelligent. The design in this has obviously been really well thought through. I'll give you one actual example from living in Stratford City. So just before the pandemic, I moved in about a year before. And I had, my daughter at that time was 5 years old. And of course, if you have a 5-year-old or 4-year-old child, you'll know that they want their independence, and they will run straight into roads. And if you live on a Victorian street, the road is the main feature of the outside part, right? As soon as you step out of your front door. I could walk for 20 minutes to the park, and she never had to cross a road. And the world had been designed with her in mind. And it was amazing. All that anxiety just melted away from me. And I know she could just run. And it was perfect. So those little things can never be retrofitted back into a city once it's been built. But again, those are the kinds of things, those smart little designs that add up to just so much of a wonderful life. I'll say one other thing. British people live immiserated lives in terms of their housing. They just need to travel and see the rest of the world. America has an amazing standard when it comes to the internal fit out of a house. And obviously their houses are huge. But, you go to somewhere like Switzerland and you realize, the windows, firstly, they're obviously by law triple glazed. Double glazing is actually illegal because it's just not good enough. But you can, everything is just so smart and intelligent. We have all of these technologies, and yet we live like paupers and still pay £1 million for the privilege. That's what upsets me. So this is where it all gets corrected.
I would pick up on your point about the retrofitting of cities, because as exciting as this is, and we are lovers of the future, but there is something of a precedent for this, right? Which is the estates, right? The post-war estates that aimed to free people from the tyranny of the road, and that was like an explicit thing, right? That's why so many of these tower blocks are in kind of parks, and yet that seems to have produced outcomes that are, unideal at one end of the spectrum, actively promoting criminality on the other, right? That how do we? And I suppose the real question, I think maybe the tension at the heart of so many of these discussions is, how do we know that this is the right way now of doing it? That, our models of trams, of a futuristic urbanism we've now got it right. Like that I think is a key question, because people say the brainiacs have had their ideas before and yet they got it wrong.
So in theory, we're so much better at what's known as, you're identifying as placemaking, right? Which, i.e., where do buildings go? How should they be mixed and infused? How do streets operate? And how do people flow through all of this stuff? A lot of it was prior experimentation in a world wrecked by war, where people deliberately wanted to throw out old ideas. And a lot of that stuff had been practiced and well-versed and worked, and it just worked. And yet people were like, okay, we've got to live, everything has to be renewed again because we can't live the horrors of World War I and II. Right? So keep that in mind, because it's worth knowing why the brutalists were the way that they were, and why they were utopianists, right? They just got a lot of it wrong, and they got a lot of it wrong because they didn't listen to the past. That's experimentation, and we're going to get things wrong with this city. We're going to get things wrong continually. That is what advancement means and change, right? You experiment and you fail, but you learn. Not experimenting at all because you're worried about failing is the mistake. That's the mistake. So, but we do know, and it's partly also because we have data. Right? In ways that we don't. We've been able to collect it and study it and examine it and understand how humans flow through scenes, right? But most people listening to this would have seen a kind of famous visual of the pathway is built this way, but as soon as it snows, you see actually how humans traverse the landscape, right? So there's lots of stuff that we've learned about placemaking, which, of course, we'd want to then, imbue into the city. So I think we can feel confident now. And I spent a long time talking to architects going, why don't we build cities? And they turned to me and I'm like, well, because it's a stupid thing to do. No one builds cities anymore. We wouldn't ever take those kinds of risks, I guess. And they didn't really even know themselves why they don't do it. And so, but we have, it's a lot of retained knowledge about how to do this properly. King's Cross, Stratford, those are just two examples very close to home here in London. But there's, go look at China. They've been building cities for 50, 60 years. They're pretty successful at it.
And where are you at with the project as we speak? You're working with Joe Reeve from LFG.
The wonderful Joe Reeve.
Yeah. You've identified an area in the country.
And we should say, why is this the place?
Oh, right, of course. It's next to the largest, basically, density of talent, not just in Britain, but in the world.
Is it going to be on the brain
Cambridge.
train line?
Sorry?
Is it going to be on the brain train line?
Yes, right. It should be. And it's easy enough to extend it from Cambridge south to where the city will be. So it's to the east of Cambridge.
Yeah.
And it's just on the other side of the green belt. And the whole location there's a lot of factors that kind of went into finally identifying this site as being the one. So if you are going to build a city, first of all, you want to be able to purchase the land cheaply. So if there's lots of people living there, that's going to be problematic. There's about 8,000 people who live in that 45,000 acre plot. If you go north or south or east or further west, there's almost double the amount of populations. That's a good reason to put it there. But then there's other elements like, again, it's close to Cambridge, but it's also borders West Suffolk. So you end up with an interesting dynamic between those two places. The way that we're doing it is through a development corporation, because it's the only way you can agglomerate the land. But it turns out 1/3 of the land is owned by one person. So that's a good start, right?
Who?
Yeah.
Well, it's known. So it's Lord Vestey.
Lord Festy is about to become Lord Moneybucks. Moneybucks first.
Lord Investy.
Surprise, surprise. We have a landed aristocracy, and it turns out that a lord owns 1/3 of most of this plot.
Well, that makes it so much easier, doesn't it?
Well, right. So it's either easy or really hard. So, and we've engaged a few of the local landowners already.
What I will say is that some listeners might be listening to this and thinking this is pie in the sky. And yes, when you arrived in the King Charles III space station just now, you were still festooned with the red tape from meeting West Sussex Council earlier today.
Yeah, I'm dressed, I thought, appropriately for my meeting, and it just came down the motorway from the M11, having spent an hour and a half,
they're
with the council.
Right?
I wouldn't go so far as to say they're curious. I tell you what their issues are. They exist for the Treasury. They have very few infrastructure projects that work in terms of a business case. And the very simple answer to why that is they don't have enough people. The last thing that they, generally speaking, want is more people. So then they're stuck in a bind. And there's these little infrastructure projects that we...
Sorry, can you explain that? That they need more people in order to be be worth investing in, but
right,
why would they not want more people?
If you want to... So take Haverhill. It's a small town. Well, it's reasonably sized. It's 30,000 people. Doesn't have a train station. It's an appalling indictment maybe of British transport failures and the beaching cuts of the 60s, fine. But it is what it is, and it isn't going to get a train station anytime soon. Why? Because it's not worth it. Why? There's not enough people. To the people who live there, of course it's worth it, right? They don't want to spend an hour and a half commuting either to London or even 45 minutes to Cambridge, which is literally down the road. It shouldn't take that long. You know, you want to know why we're such an unproductive nation? Well, that's one of those reasons, right? But so they'll never get their train station. And of course, you start looking around and you realize, oh gosh, there's, that whole region is water stressed. We live on a rainy island. Surely this is a solvable problem. Why is it so water stressed? The answer is we haven't built any reservoirs. The main water company is Cambridge. It's existed for, 150 plus years. Never built a reservoir. It's just taken the water from the chalk aquifers all this time, and suddenly you put a few more people there, and it's unsustainable because they don't have the infrastructure. So you need to be able to make the business case, generally speaking, to the Treasury to say, look, actually people will use these trains. They will use these roads. It is worth it. Will increase productivity. Please give us the cash. So they are stuck in a bind. And you come with a big idea like building a city. At first, you're going to get a lot of pushback. That's exactly what we're kind of getting from various different parties. But then people start to go, oh, wait, hang on. Does that mean we could get a train station? Does it mean that we would be able to solve the water problem? Because you obviously have to build a bunch of reservoirs. Does it mean that we could get, and there's a long list of things that people want, and maybe they could get.
Have the residents realised, though, that you're proposing to move 1 million people into their vicinity?
Yeah, that's pretty much the first thing that they realised.
I presume they're not that keen on that element of the plan.
And again, people's first reactions are usually not their second or third. And I have to be an optimist. Yeah, you have to be an optimist, clearly. Look, people are also... I spent a long time trying to listen to NIMBYs, right? And because I was wondering why on earth did we have such a terrible housing problem? I mean, I'm talking from, 2017, 2018, 2019 on, kind of onwards. And they're right, in many ways. They have excellent points. The houses are terrible. There's never any infrastructure that comes with those houses. So we're talking about usually sort of small extensions on the side of a village or a town. And it causes huge disturbance. Fine, whatever you do, you're going to have to suffer with that in some way or another. And there's never any placemaking that goes with it. So where's the extra hospital and yes, the road and all those other
which is weird, right?
It's like it doesn't work
because supposedly this is what Section 106 sort of developer requirements, right, are for. It's strange that even though there is supposedly something in statute to make this happen, it's actually regarded by a lot of people when they hear of a development as actually the worst thing and so misguided. Like what
it can never be holistic. If it's actually a local lord doing it, then he will think it through better than Barrett Holmes will.
It's a completely irrational system. So, or to put it the other way, if you want things to be planned rationally, then why would you do it in this piecemeal barter system kind of way?
And maybe if you explain what Section 106 is.
It's basically the way in which a council says, if you want this, right, then you should give us this, right? And it's not ever as blunt as that. It would actually be better if it was just a simple, straightforward bargain. But it's like, what are you going to give us if we say yes? And let's take it back just like a step. What is planning permission? It's like vital to know what those words are. It's just permission, right? You have a piece of land, so what's the issue, right? If you want to build what you want to build, what's the issue? It's
invented in 1947, right?
Exactly. I fear our old
we could do the whole
enemy is rising up.
The Town and Country Planning Act.
Back to that. But take it from that. From 47 onwards, because we have what we have for the moment. But it's just about saying, do a bunch of people who are affected by this and the decision makers just say yes or no, right? That's all that is. And it's such a long, irrational process. It makes no sense and it makes no one happy. So why are we still doing it? There has to be a better way. And there is. It turns out there is. It's either development corporation or, as lots of people have proposed, let's go back to a different system, let's liberalize it all, let's throw out the rules. I'm in favor of, and I think lots of people realize they will be in favor of, actually, if you live in an area and people do want to build something, maybe other people should have a say about that. Because Otherwise, it gets a little crazy pretty quickly, I'm sure.
Does it? I mean, I understand the argument, but I think the thing that
Yeah, if
radicalised
you're
me.
some sharp-elbowed spiv with a big field in a nice village, then
Yeah, I sure, but I think also that there is something horrific about the fact that, as you say about planning permission, right? The idea that if you own a piece of land, you are not allowed to do what you wish with it, which I think is and I know not to bring up the old enemy of 47, but this is a nationalisation of all the land, right? It is a conscious decision by the Labour Party that the government should have a say and be able to plan.
Or control it,
or
right?
control,
Just take those powers into central government, in a sense, or into government, whether local or central, and it's the will of the people, right? Expressed through democracy and et cetera, et cetera. And of course, but let me give you an example, because it was effective at getting stuff done. Again, remember where you are. You're in a situation where the state has just won a huge war and executed it on a huge scale. Of course, states, the theory at the time is, of course, states are the place to get things done, right? They didn't create these rules to stop doing stuff. So let me give you a little tiny anecdote, which is to say Milton Keynes, right? We much deride it in terms of its aesthetics, for sure. People who live there love it. What does the economics say? So most of the new town developments failed. The only thing that wasn't a town was Milton Keynes. It was a city, expressed as such intentionally. It is the most productive place outside of a few boroughs in London that we have in this country. And if everyone lived in Milton Keynes, or we lived as Milton Keynes, as richly as they do, we'd be something like 50% richer, which is astounding. So what's so special about Milton Keynes? Nothing. It's got no natural advantages. It's got no special perks and tax breaks, not that exist now. It's just that it was built more recently. That's all that they had going for it, in a sense.
And what does that mean? I mean, does number of roundabouts correlate with productivity? I imagine not.
These little tiny practical things. So if you want to, there's a famous study between France and Britain. Why are the French so productive, right? Comparatively speaking, they're 20% more productive than we are. I mean, it should disgust anyone, especially those who are Anglo-futurists. And of course, what do they do with the time? They just take it off. They take an extra day off basically every week because they can afford to do so. But if you did this, the study showed, look, if you're cleaning an English hotel versus a French hotel, well, the French hotel's just been built more recently. So it's been designed that you can clean it faster. And so they do their work faster. They clean the room faster. And in Britain, we're still going around these creaky old Victorian stairs, right? That's basically what that study found. It turns out the built environment and productivity are intricately related. And intimately so. Let me add on Milton Keynes. So here's the anecdote. It's conceived and planned about 67, 68. I'm going to get some of my dates a little wrong and wonky. Then it's put as a bill into Parliament. And the public consultation was, I'm going to give you a clue, it was short. But can you guess how short?
A year?
Silence on the radio is not good. It was less than a year, far less. It was 6 weeks. That's how you get stuff done.
Exemplary.
So that is the 1947 Town and Country Planning Act in action. Using a development corporation, turns out, fine, let's just ask people for 6 weeks. That's it, wrapped up. We're going to get this done.
You can probably come up with an opinion in 6 weeks, can't you?
Yeah, right. I mean, why do you need 3 years, or many, many years in many cases? But that was how it was employed. So it doesn't need to be the system that we have right now. But it does require that government do these things, and that's problematic for all sorts of other reasons.
So you and Joe, you're going to found a development corporation.
We have. Yeah.
You have. What are the steps
in
between...
name.
It's called ACDC, the Albion City Development Corporation,
that's
right?
That's
correct. But what are the stages between founding that development corporation and, the first bricks being laid in this new city? Sorry, the first bits of plywood being gently massaged into the organic soil.
CLT, being erected. So we're in what we're calling, and this is what we've been communicating to all our volunteers. And actually, can I just slightly sidestep and say there's been hundreds of people with huge professional expertise that have come forward, and they definitely wouldn't have come forward if we said we want to build a town. So that there's ambition wrapped into the notion and the word.
I came
city.
to one of your events.
Of course,
and
you were there.
100 plus people who were all there of a Wednesday evening to kind of discuss the aesthetics. And
if you scroll down our pledgees list, you'll find that, I was looking the other day, I was like, we need an economist. So I'll scroll down and then I saw, there's a guy called Grant Fitzner. He says he's an economist. Okay, well, I'll Google him, find out if he's really legitimate economist. It turns out he was the former chief economist of the ONS, right? So that's the kind of caliber of people. And all the obviously chief economists of
before they moved to Newport, right?
Yeah. But, there are some amazing people who are just buried on this. All Patrick Schumacher. You're like, he's an architect. Who is he? He's the principal architect of Zaha Hadid. He's not just any regular Joe. So these are the people who are backing this project. Why? Because they're also massively fed up. But you had you asked me about the plan, so I'll go back to that. Okay, so we're in phase 1, and this is what's confounded everyone in the traditional kind of development industry, if you want. They use that in the kind of wider sense, whether it's construction or engineering or planning or whatever. They're like, this is not how you do stuff. What the hell? You're supposed to agglomerate the land, work with the land promoter, submit your plans a few years later, get them rejected, revise them, do your section 1. What are you doing? Why are you just standing on stage and making a lot of noise, seemingly? So this is about getting Steve Reed is the only person really that matters in all of this, right? Because only he has the power to create a development corporation.
And he's the housing secretary.
He's the housing secretary. And the current housing secretary, these things can change. The Secretary of State.
Exactly. Are you a little worried that your showing of ankle will come back to bite you as some new apparatchik is parachuted in?
Well, he's the only one who's so far worn a baseball cap that says "Build, baby, build." So we seem, hopefully, yes, we've got the right guy. But more than that, he stays in position long enough. But he's the only person in the country, along with obviously, Rachel Reeves and the like, who has the power to instantiate a development corporation. Brilliant. So how do we get him to basically say, we're interested, go away and do the proper planning you need? And one of our things is that as ACDC, you need some way to incentivize this sort of private company that we set up in a sense to operate, and you need the investors to know that they're going to get some kind of payout, right? So what is that part? Well, it turns out, so we're asking for 80 acres in the center of this city, which obviously doesn't yet exist. So it's an easy promise to make at this stage. I can imagine Steve saying, sure, you can have your 80 acres in your imaginary fantasy city. Not a problem. Go ahead. And the precedent was set by Canary Wharf, which basically did the same thing. So
this was the Dockland Development
exactly.
Corporation. Well, an astonishing success, right? That and the City of London as these sort of models for what can be achieved.
Exactly. Also, right, a development corporation, and spoke to the guy who did his PhD on the history of the early section of Canary Wharf development, right? And you had a company called Olympia in York, but before that, the company also. Before that was promised land and et cetera. So it all got convoluted and very messy as things sometimes do. But there was that precedent. So I'm like, great, it's there. We know that it exists. It seems like a reasonable ask. And so that's the goal for phase 1. Can we get Steve Reed to say, yeah, this is interesting. Go ahead, raise 200 million, do all the master planning, the site surveys. This is when we start to really get to know what this city starts to look like. Bring on the amazing architects, etc. Bring on all of those ideas. How much will it cost? Do all of that stuff. And we want to get there as fast as possible because we know we've got to get a spade in the ground. It's only good for Labour if it happens right at the start of or the end of this parliament, right? And they can sell that to the electorate as something, presumably, right? So in order to get there, we need to bring in the stakeholders. And we need every...
I thought you were sound.
Wait. Are you suggesting you're not going to bulldoze them? I'm not interested anymore.
Well, we need to get, the
zombies start crawling through every window and door.
It is unfortunately
consultations. I've come.
Environmental regulations.
We do unfortunately
Character
have to
of the area.
in some way abide by at least least existing rules in some way. You can't break them all. So who have we got? Who do we need to bring on side? Who do we need to convince? Well, yeah, there's West Suffolk Council. Their ambit runs over half of this plot. There's Cambridgeshire, but they're pretty pro-growth, so that's good. I think. I mean, I'm saying this on a podcast. I haven't actually got to meet them
You
yet.
better hope so.
But they are one of the most pro-growth places in the country, so that's probably a good sign. Let's see. And then who are the other stakeholders? You've got the most important one, obviously, being the local residents. So we need to engage with them properly. But again, given that there's 8,000 people, that's a very small number compared to what most other schemes have to kind of contend with. So that means that the benefits of this can be repurposed properly and be really generous. Then you've got two other groups. You've got your prospective residents and anchor tenants, the people who want to kind of move into the city. We have to show that there's demand and product market fit, to use the kind of tech term, if you want. And the last is who owns the land right now, right? But they know that if you've got a development corporation, well, they could get CPO'd, right? Compulsory purchase ordered. That's not very pleasant for them. It's a kind of, this is what development corporations are about.
So Lord Investee should be selling up beforehand.
Or come and invest in us, I guess, is a sense. But, these are all very speculative conversations in that sense. So we're getting towards the kind of sensitive point. But what's been remarkable is how fast this thing has moved. It's moved so fast. It's almost breathless. How many people we've kind of been able to bring on board, actually start these working groups, get these very practical. You've started a movement in Anglofuturism. You've been part of starting it. And you get a lot of dreamers. And dreaming is amazing and wonderful and good. But it turns out, we didn't even have a minute to do any of that. We're right into the practical meat of this issue. And it's exciting because it feels like it really is venturing forward and it's going to happen.
How do people react when they ask what you do and you tell them that you're trying to found a city? Like, what do normies say?
I mean, okay, it's a dinner party test, right? Like, what do I say when I turn up at some random dinner party and say, like, hey, Shiv, so what are you doing now? I'm like, well, I'm then I have to say I'm building a city, and I can feel it's awkward, but then it does feel very vital. And yeah, it's completely unusual. And the normal reaction is, actually, you know what? It's very Marmite-ish. It's a really good, we're in such a terrible place in this country at the moment that actually I'll know within about 20 seconds who the person is I'm talking to, because they'll usually say, I rang up Tony Ralston. He's an SMR, small modular reactor expert, one of the UK's finest, if you want. And I don't, he's never spoken to me before.
Because they're going to go under every village green in the new city, right?
They certainly are a big feature of this city. We absolutely would love to make sure that there's the case for putting one here, because we can come to that in a bit. But I rang him up, and within about 30 seconds, he'd said, "Oh, we absolutely need to build a city. It really needs to happen right now." And that was kind of I'm quoting him word for word, but that's pretty much what he said. So people split. And it's been, you just find those people who suddenly, out of the woodwork, you wouldn't expect. That's exactly the project we need to do.
Which is striking, right? Because we sit at this very, well, I mean, we are all relatively young. I say as the youngest person here.
Your skin's glowing.
Exactly.
You have all of your hair, unlike I do.
There's all of mine as well.
A whole lot of crow's feet in this room. No, listeners. But we sit at this point, right, where there are a lot of people who feel hugely aggrieved by the fact that they have not been able to have the lives that they've been promised. And as you say, there are people who seem to get it, who are excited by it. Are these always the sort of the young people, right, who feel this might give them the ability to maybe buy a house? And you've always got the aged, decrepit zombie stakeholders who are trying to hold you back, or does it not split that easily?
No. Tony Ralston is 70 years old. So it's really not clear that it does split by age. It's a sense of fealty towards the country in a sense that it's gone so bad that something ambitious needs to be done. I think that's basically it. I can't express it in any kind of finer terms because I think it literally is just a sentiment. It's a wellspring of emotion. And so when someone comes
All
forward,
patriots want Forest City, is what you're saying.
yeah, well, yeah, that sounded like that. They
you don't
should.
want Forest City.
They should. Wow.
No true Englishman.
So that's and it's lovely to come up and be met like that, right? As soon as you pick up the phone and someone meets you with the same level of energy, and they're a total stranger, that feels so empowering.
And if it's not the the oldies, what explains the resistance? Why? Because as you say, we've had difficulties building houses, and this is not just a British problem, right? This is an Anglophone or even maybe Anglosphere or maybe even an international problem. What explains this resistance to doing it? Or if they're not old people, are they people who own houses who will see the value of their investment kind of fall apart?
I don't think it's that financial, if you want. I don't think people think that rationally. It's very emotive. Okay, so I'm here's my YIMBY chops, if you want. I'm on an advisor for the YIMBY Alliance, and I've been doing this for a very long time, since 2010, right? Saying we need more homes. I wrote a book, as you kind of said, Jilted Generation. That's what it was about. So I've been on this circuit for a very long time. And NIMBYs have a point, right? Which they've expressed in many different ways, right? They don't.
I think we're quite NIMBY sympathetic on this.
Yeah,
We're
podcast,
not wholeheartedly YIMBY.
Yeah. So they oftentimes it's, for example, if you've got your pylon scheme running from Norfolk, which is what it's being proposed. Norfolk, because that's where all the energy is off the Norfolk grid. It's just not being attached to the national grid. So we're actually creating loads of electricity. It's just not going anywhere because there's no pylons. So you've got your pylons running from Norwich to Tilbury in Essex. And people don't want pylons next to them. They're ugly. There's no denying it, really. Sure, they express a sense of, okay, we've got cheaper electricity, so it's very practical benefits to them, but they're pretty ugly. Roads, motorways, people don't really, it's hard to be affectionate towards these things. If we're really honest with ourselves, yes, it's the future, but you try and sell another mile of motorway in Wales, you come a cropper completely, and yet they know that they're poor because they can't get around, right? So how do you square these circles? One way in which you can is with a thing like a city, right? Because people fall in love with cities all the time, right? Because they have a culture to them. They have a sense of placemaking, as we've discussed. They have an aesthetic. They have an energy, right? They're a place where you work and you live and you are born. No one's, born next to pylons. It doesn't work, right? So that's something you can sell to people as a city. And so if you're saying, okay, look, yes, you want the infrastructure, great. Well, 3 major hospitals, 300 plus schools, secondary schools, of course, all these amenities will be now on your doorstep. Suddenly you're having a different conversation.
Oh, well, I'd like to ask about the city, because you say about the culture or place or sense of a location happens in cities. And I think that's very true, and they have been in recent. I mean, most of the world now lives in cities, right? We're the age of a rural population is kind of over. But towns and villages have long been places of great. Culture is not quite the right word, but community is about one, right?
Absolutely.
Why is it now? Like, what explains the demise of these places? Because you read accounts of people in the third world leaving their villages and their towns because they're so desperate to get to the city, and they say the promise of it. What explains this transition, and why is the city now the sort of the place that you need to be for, to sort of, well, frankly, to self-actualize?
It's not the only place by any means. So I don't want to kind of, in a sense, exclude loving your town or village. People have huge attachments to, in a sense, where they live in that respect. Plenty of, that's what we're also up against, right? People who are like, I love my village. I grew up here. I have had, 40, 50 years of my life. But then, so these are the stories that you kind of get. So let me tell you kind of 3 stories in rapid succession, hopefully. You've got stories of 2 Tims. One who lives in, a guy who works, he's 19, they're both 19. And these are true stories from having conversed with them over the last kind of couple of weeks. Guy works in a petrol station in Stradishall, has a handful of GCSEs, really not making any money. He has to leave. Why? Because even though he lives in a really run-down, it's an estate, but it's sort of 1960s homes. They're kind of terraced houses built in a kind of courtyard fashion, if you want. And it's right next to H&P High Point, which will be Europe's largest prison when they extend it. There's your kind of extra prison extension.
Very
right
angry
there.
futurist.
Yeah. But so he lives right there. But he can't afford to buy his home where he lives because it's 200 grand. Insane. Then you have the other Tim who also works in a newsagent, but this time it's in Haverhill, which is where I bought the Haverhill Echo because they put it on the front page. So I went to speak to him while I was there, while I was purchasing the paper. Great. And he goes to Cambridge Uni, as I said, also kind of 19, but he, where is he going to stay in Haverhill? No, there's no prospects for him. And you can't commute to Cambridge from there. It's really quite difficult because I don't think he has a driving license because he can't get a license because he can't book the appointment because that whole system is broken. So what does he do, right? He's going to leave as well. So there's no prospects there. And then there's one other guy, the former a councillor from one of the villages in the area. I don't want to kind of give his details away too much. But again, no assisted living, has to move. His wife needs to go and live in assisted living. What does he do? There's nothing in the area. So, and his kids have also then moved away. So this suddenly what was home for 50 years for him is no longer home. These all need solutions. A lot of them are about the built environment, right? Cheaper homes, better facilities. That's village rural life in many senses, or small town life as well.
I was going to say, because it's interesting, right? Because all of a sudden, these places that were once wonderful for how separate they were, and the quietude, the peace, now become restrictive. Like, has there been a meaningful shift that means that you can't live in villages, or is that just always been the case and people have moved out of them? Like what explains this abandoning? And we talked before we started recording about, parts of Italy, parts of Spain that have just been emptied out. Like, what explains this hollowing out of the countryside?
I mean, my field, if you want, of sort of or the lens that I've always used is a kind of intergenerational lens and a demographic one, right? So, we should always keep in the back of my mind the fact that basically you've created a huge new class of people that never existed in human history, right? If Max Weber was around, he'd be like, oh, look at this new leisure class, right? Who are they? They're people basically retired who derive incomes almost equal to what workers do, but they don't get it from work. They get it from capital, right? They're kind of to use a slightly derogatory term, they're kind of a rentier class, but fine. They certainly don't go to work. And so where is that money coming from? It's coming from other productive industries and people. Fine. But they've exerted a huge influence on our culture, in their purchasing power, in our economy, and how they spent or not spent their money. And finally, obviously, they have a lot of time. So they spend a lot of their time in politics, local politics, influencing that too. And you can't compete with them because they don't do any work. They don't have to go to work anymore. And, anyone who does work goes, well, I'm exhausted. It's 9:30. I'm not going to fill out a planning application response, right? But, people who have spare time on their hands then get stuck in. It's great, civic participation, but it's usually not to the benefit of people who want cheaper homes, for example. So, I keep that in the back of my mind all the time because it's happening everywhere all at once in the last 20, 30 years.
But it's also true that we're adding hundreds of thousands of new people to the country every year, right? And they
Absolutely.
come not with they don't have houses when they get here, and so like they're part of the story. It may be not a comfortable part of the story for a YIMBY, but massive immigration is like a massive part of why houses are so expensive. It's pensioners, but it's not just pensioners.
Yeah, I mean the way in which the population has changed is that yes, people are not dying like they used to, right? That's the kind of very crude way of putting it. But at the same time, we've had a huge, migration. That whole policy has just been a total failure. Like the Boris wave outraged me. I feel like Shabana Mahmood really summed up how I feel about it. I'm the guy who gets, on Twitter gets told, go home, you fucking Paki, you're not British, right? I'm like, well, do I say, do I respond back, or do I say, actually, I'm not Pakistani, I'm Indian? Like, is that the Weasley awful way to respond to that? Of course not. Like, what do I do? Like, and I'm British, right? I regard myself as British. Like that whole, like, am I English debate, right? Could I be an Anglo-futurist, right? Like, these are real kind of live issues. I love engaging with them, but it's difficult when someone says, someone like Shiv Malik building a city here, just go home, mate. Well, I don't have another home. I was born in America, if anything. Where am I going? Right? This is all tricky. So I'm definitely with Shabana Mahmood when she says, look, we have to sort this out, right? If we want to keep any sense of community cohesion, the rules have to be fair, and you can't have outrages like, it's an outrage that there were 4 million people came right after Brexit. And it seems most recently that, Boris Johnson was basically told by the Treasury, well, we can't have wages going through the roof, so let's, bring in as many people as possible. And yeah, and that we know from the figures that also they're really low skilled, right? So it's that's where I fall on that issue. But why haven't we built a reservoir in 30 years? Is it because it's because
the Pakistanis couldn't use a shovel?
Right. Hang on. Why don't you have a railway station from Haverhill? Was that immigrants? No. But these problems are still ours.
But it's a very good point, right? In that actually the beneficiaries of that, of bringing in low skilled labour are again the elderly who have a lot of money to spend, who can then acquire services and goods at still cut prices, whilst the people who might otherwise get the work and be producers and benefit from labour shortages can't, right?
Let's flip this around. Let's flip this around, which is say, look, Claire Fox said something to me a long time, now Baroness Fox, right?
You give her proper respect. That's an ex-communist you're talking about.
So yes, she said to me when I wrote Jilted Generation, she said, look, Shiv, and she took me aside, and she's really she's a fascinating figure. Let's not go down that road per se, but she said, look, isn't this book just a giant whinge? What are you actually doing? And that annoyed the... Can I swear? Are we allowed to swear? That annoyed the hell out of me.
You can do tasteful swearing on this podcast.
That annoyed the hell out of me for years, because I thought, damn it, she's right. She's just right. Well, what am I actually doing? And that kind of, yes, leads to the city in a sense. But to flip what you've been saying around, what are millennials actually doing? What is Gen Z actually doing to, help improve their material circumstances, right? As maybe Marx would have put it in that sense, right? Because that's it. The rent's too damn high. House prices are too damn high. Yes, okay, you want to go protest about Palestine or trans rights? Well,
more infographic will do it. Cheap houses.
But you know what? Trans people, they also have to pay the rent. Right?
Well, actually, if you're in a polycule, you don't have to pay the rent.
Okay, sure. Really effing complicated quite fast. But, these are I spent a long time pondering why it is that, like, my generation, so I'm 44, right? And we've got a kind of nice spread on this in the KC3 here with the age range. Calum, you're almost...
I'm 26.
Okay, all right. So what is that? The lower bounds of Gen Z?
No, upper bounds. Upper
bounds, yeah.
I've just about escaped being grouped in with the whingers, the millennial whingers.
So great. You represent a different generation at the table. That's good. But, like, why is it that I spent so long and no one else of my generation really wanted to follow in saying, yeah, you know what, housing is messed up. How are we going to self-organize? And actually, do the practical things that clearly other generations are doing to us. But do we have our own agency and power? Which is kind of basically what Claire was saying to me. You're whinging, right? What about your own agency and power? Surely more than just writing a book. And I guess in this way, this is what, Joe has been so remarkable at. He is probably, given already what he's just done, maybe the bar's really low, but the greatest kind of community organizer of our generation, across generations, right? With starting with LFG. And I remember him not very long ago standing on a stage and saying, the cavalry isn't coming. We are the cavalry. And that's actually when I flipped and I was like, you know what? It's time to build that city. So I got out the old plans, started talking to Joe and said, let's just do this. It's got to happen.
Oh, so it was your idea from the get-go?
Well, it's an old set of ideas, right? Because this whole thing is, and it is premised on, to make it economically work. The housing is community land trust stuff. The rest of it is the whole city is in a special economic zone, which is the incentive, rather like Canary Wharf, right? Those kind of tax incentives that you get for setting up a shop there if you're a business. And you combine those two things and you start to get really interesting incentives for getting people to move to this place. Aside from the fact that it's right next to Cambridge, which basically can't expand. But those plans, that basic theory had been, I'd been thinking about for years and years and years. How do you actually get to make this work? Again, why is it a city at first? Because you need the commercial land.
Casting Lascivia size over beautiful farmlands when everything passes.
It's actually, yes, what I have done for a long time. And people who drive with me go, oh God, he's going to start veering down country lanes again to look for empty plots. And yes, I've done it. And, and I'm not attached to British farmland. This I have to say. In a way, many other people are. Because for me, I think I'm a kind of George Monbiot in that respect.
You think it should all be covered with forests?
Well, yeah.
Instead
if we're actually pro-nature, like what was there before? Like how does this get rewilded,
wilderness,
right?
Badlands.
Yeah. Yes.
Bears, villains. I was of this view, but now I've come round to really loving the countryside and what our ancestors did to make this country habitable and beautiful, and how it's been the work of many hands over generations. But terraforming something so it's a perfect place for Brits to live.
I think that's true, but also
I don't really wandering through a forest.
No, but I think it's not. But it's not necessarily doesn't necessarily hold anymore, right? With the advance of vast amounts of mechanized industry that has then killed all the hedgerows.
There are fewer apple-cheeked maidens
exactly,
gathering in the harvest.
Tom, you're a bit...
Where have they gone?
Tom, the Anglo-Futurist, there'll be an apple-cheeked maiden in every field.
Tom, your ability to get down and dirty in a hay wain has been really... has been really a bit... Well, I think with your whistle, our whistles have been wetted with the taste of country cider. Let's go for a break now, and then we can return after a short break and a word from our sponsors to the real topic of intergenerational warfare.